Marshall Harrison, how are you doing?
Great.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Uh, so I just want to kind of go down, sort of retrace how I discovered you. And
I'd like to know that too, because I'm wondering what this major jazz guy wants to know, will know from an old rocker like me. I'd like to hear this, please. This is going to be good.
well, okay. So this must have started. It must have been about 6 or 7 years ago, and that would have been around the time I started playing guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working at a big evangelical church, and when I started the gig there, I mean, I played bass for a lot more years than guitar. When I started there, I played bass, and I was writing music for them, and because it's a big evangelical church, it's like very guitar driven, right? So there's always at least an electric and an acoustic guitar player, let alone the bass player. And then so I was like, well, if I'm going to write for this stuff as effectively as I would like to, I need to know the instrument better. I need to know more about the instrument.
Yeah.
And this is not a new concept or new idea. There's a lot of history of great classical composers where they would okay, I want to write a clarinet sonata or concerto. I need to know more about the clarinet, so I need to start taking lessons on clarinet because I want to write like I understand the instrument, the real nuance, the ergonomics of the instrument.
Right. Right.
And so because I wanted to write better, I started playing guitar. And then
you've done pretty well in your 7 years, I must admit. pretty advanced.
Thank you.
Seriously.
But with I fell in love with it. I mean, and then I started spending way too much time at Guitar Center and all of that. And it's interesting because there's an interesting sort of convergence between this must have been actually maybe a little bit longer than 7 years ago because my son is 7, and there's a lot of like early memories that he has of running around in Guitar Center. And to this day, everyone knows Moses, my son. They know him. He's very personable and everything because he's been around since before he could walk. I would bring him in and he'd want to play on the drums or whatever, and while he's playing on the drums over here checking out what guitars that I haven't seen that they have.
That's where my son goes. He goes to the drums right away. Like, Dad, I'm gonna go rock out.
Yeah. And so anyhow, I mean, it started there, and I mean, I've been blessed to play with a lot of great guitar players over the years, and so I listen to them, and then also the players that I was into, players like George Benson, and this is from when I was really, when I was a kid, and then I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, this is before I started playing guitar, 10, 15 years ago, I started really digging into Alan Holdsworth.
Yeah.
And so there was some things that were sort of converging. Because my practicing on guitar, for the first 6 months, all I did was work on picking because that was the thing that was most different from bass.
It makes sense.
Lots of picking. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm looking, I'm always trying to, improve my picking, and Troy Grady and, cracking the code. And of course you're on there, and then I started checking you out, and then of course I've heard you talk at length about Alan Holdsworth. You did a few videos where you talked about legato, really playing legato, and then we connected, and of course I've been following you since. since then.
Great.
And your live stream, it used to be a Friday night consistently. Stream is really grown. I mean, that whole thing and the you know.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the whole Swibrid thing?
Well, it's just like, I've always had a motto, like, you know, use it or lose it. And, you know, I would play like Led Zeppelin, like Bronyer, where you'd have to do some hybrid picking. And then my guitar teacher at GIT, Brett Garced, guitarist for Nelson, you know, he would always say, you know, just, it's there. He'd use his fingers for like sweeping and different things. And so I was always using my hybrid. And then I was always a sweeper. I'd always economy pick. From day one, my teacher told me, hey man, you save a stroke if you just go right to the next string instead of like coming up and around it, you know, to pick, you know, on a 3-note per string scale. So I was totally sold on that. I went to Frank Gambale's, you know, clinics he did, and just totally sold on that. And so I was having trouble with a passage, and I just remember it vividly. In 2002, I was at a ranch in West Texas, and I just had my old guitar, and was trying to play this part from Crossroads, a famous passage, you know, from the movie Crossroads, and it just wasn't happening. For whatever reason, I just decided to start like intentionally sweeping right after I plucked the string with my fingers, or any fingers. And I remember it just took this very difficult passage and reduced it to absolute butter. I mean, I could play it twice as fast as Steve Vai, who's a notorious major technician, practicer guy, you know. So I was like, well, something's different here. This is really, I don't know what's going on, but so I really like thought about it and worked on it and tried to apply it everywhere I could. I'm a big transcriber of classical, and I just tried to just apply it everywhere I could, just shoehorn it in, and it just worked. Went gangbusters. It just it reduced some of the toughest stuff to just child's play, and it's just been almost miraculous. I couldn't believe it. I mean, that's it. That's about it. Just trying to play this piece in 2002, and I thought the name Swibrid was stupid at first. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of silly, but it just stuck. It's so unique, you know, and it perfectly describes what we're doing. We're marrying like economy sweeping with hybrid picking, and you know, they add up to more than the sum of their parts. It's like a synergy, a kind of thing. It really does, you know. So I look at it.
Now I've so Tom Quayle says all the time that he says he's not a good picker. Like his alternate picking is not very good. And
it's hard. Alternate picking is hard. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You know, it's hard.
and so in his talking about the difficulty, he said that he developed his legato playing just like as a survival tool, almost like, well, I need to be able to play this, and I can't play it with alternate picking. I mean, with your playing, was the Swibrid thing, was that at all sort of a I mean, you just mentioned it was because of it's something technical that you were trying to play, and that made it easier to play. So, I mean, you have such amazing technique, and you can play you play such ridiculous stuff on the instrument, and it just seems like it's just totally easy to play. I can't imagine that alternate picking is more difficult for you than playing all that stuff that you can play, period.
I curate, you know. I'm like, I take after Vladimir Horowitz, you know. He takes what the gods will give him. He didn't just try and force that round peg through the square hole. He really would take, and you can, if you study his, you know, Vladimir Horowitz, the great, you know, Russian pianist, you know, and he would come up with these like transcriptions of like Carmen, you know, from a piece from the opera.
Thank you so much for watching my video so far.
If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
From the opera, and he would like put his fanciest licks in there, and he was really doing like what just felt good. You know, it's hard to describe. It's like he's not trying to like force like a crazy, you know, awkward, like, because there's plenty of awkward piano pieces. Like, if you've ever played Rachmaninoff, any of the Etudes Tableau, they are awkward. I mean, that's why I really don't play much anymore, because it's like you really have to be firing on all cylinders. Or, I mean, even it's just like it is so unforgiving, you know, classical piano. So I really don't play much anymore. But I just try to take that Vladimir Horowitz kind of influence and just try and just work on what's like working. You know, work on kind of explore what the gods of music are giving you, and don't try and just say, oh, it's not happening, but I'm going to keep at it. I mean, there is a case to be made for woodshedding. Like when you first start out, yep, that's true. You should like fight it and work at it. But, you know, after you've been playing, you know, for maybe a few decades or so, you should like, you know what works for you, and you follow that, and you really explore some new territory. I think if you do, so that's why I do it. And it's kind of a misconception where I make it look easy, because I'm only picking the things that are easy to me. You know what I mean? That's what I'm picking to play for you guys. I don't pick the things that are like aren't happening. You know, it's like, well, let's just save that for another time. You know,
right,
so
right.
That's my outlook on it.
All right, so speaking of the whole guitar technique thing, I did a presentation. I did this lecture, Coltrane and guitar: the effects of John Coltrane on plectrum mechanics.
Oh wow, I got to check that out. Cool.
So, you know, so I'll read a little bit of the sort of introduction. So at the 42nd Annual Grammy Awards, Carlos Santana accepted the award for Album of the Year by saying, "Long live John Coltrane." Mm-hmm. And that got me thinking, why would a pop guitar player be giving homage to John Coltrane? Well, John Coltrane has had a profound influence on all jazz-influenced music, in addition to the influence on other saxophone players, like, you know, long list of great saxophone players. I mentioned guitarists in particular that I felt that he had a pretty substantial impact on, and so much to that effect that they sort of were forced to reinvent the guitar technique in order to be able to play many of the things that he played. And the folks that I focused on were Frank Gambale, Alan Holdsworth, Eddie Van Halen. And those were the ones that Eddie Van Halen, rest in peace. And one thing that is interesting is part of what got me thinking about this too was, you know, there's one of those educational videos that Alan Holdsworth did, and in the video he says that he doesn't really like the guitar, which is like, come on, man.
Yeah.
So he says he didn't. But he's like, I don't really like the guitar. He said, for me. For me, right. He said he preferred the saxophone. He wanted to play the saxophone. He loved John Coltrane. He wanted to sound like John Coltrane. And then when you put it in that perspective, the way that he approached playing the instrument, the legato, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. He's trying to sound like a horn player. Yeah, definitely. You know, and so that's part of what kind of got me going down that path. But the instrument guitar is very, like, with string skipping and all of that business, it makes it very difficult to play things that, you know, on a horn or on a keyboard or something would not be particularly difficult to play. So if you're going to be able to play those things, then you're going to have to, you can't play a traditional technique because it's just not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's, you've got to come up with, I mean, because think about it, to get a note happening on the guitar, you got to, you got to get synchronized. This has got to be happening, and this. So like, I mean, you know, so many different instruments. It's like, the sax and the piano just leave us in the dust. With a thumb and 4 fingers on the keyboard, and then you got another, got 10 fingers. I mean, it's just like. It's just like we're like, we need something else. So you got to come up with something. I mean, it's alternate picking. It's like Jimmy Bruno found out too. Hey, it's just not going to cut it. If you want to really, blow and just really go for it, hell bent for leather, you've got to come up with something else. And Frankenbali did it with his economy picking, and and you can hear the difference in an economy picker and opposed to someone like Al Di Meola or any other great alternate pickers. The economy pickers are just a hair bit. It almost seems just faster, and not so much on staying on a single string, but when you really run through a scale or run through multi-string passages, there's no denying that just sailing through with your pick and just sweeping through is way more efficient and just fast, just blazingly faster. I think. So.
Yeah, I kind of think that George Benson kind of ruined a lot of guitar players.
Yeah.
Because he got them convinced that they could play all of that ridiculous stuff that he was playing, alternate picking, like he was. He ruined a lot of folks.
Yeah, he's just one of those few that just gifted, just for whatever reason, it's happened. He made it work. But for most guys, Joe Pass and all those other guys, they made it work. But and John McLaughlin too. I mean, but I just, from 99% of the guys out there who are going to try, and then you get into Swibrid, that really, I think it really opens the doors more democratically. It opens for a lot of, you don't have to be like imbued with this preternatural talent. You don't have to be, just like Sean Lane with just this insanely hyper, nervous system. You can attempt some of his passages with it. Now that you have the right, right mechanics and right technique, that kind of opens the door. I like to think. I hope it does. And when we really get the word out on it, I mean, it's still kind of a small kind of niche, very niche kind of topic, but I really want to get it out there. It's. Because it works. It really works.
Well, it's ultra killing. I mean, if your playing is selling Swibrid, then I'm sold.
Thank you.
So Marshall, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you're from, the kind of music stuff that was happening around the house when you were a kid, maybe something about music and how music, sort of drew you in and, steered you down the path that you're on.
Yeah. Just born in the mid 70s in Houston, Texas, and just lived here my whole life, except for a few, went to, college in Nashville, went to Vanderbilt in the 90s. Then I went to GIT for a little bit, lived in LA for a few years, and throughout the turn of the century. And growing up, nobody really played. My older brother kind of messed around with piano. He got my dad to buy a piano for the house. That was really cool. But nobody really just took it seriously. My dad, I always heard music. I always heard big band music my dad would stay up all hours. He was a night owl. So I would hear downstairs. I hear my dad shuffling around, and I would hear all the big band music. I'd find out what it was later on. Like, oh, that's Take the A Train and all this other stuff. I was like, oh yeah, I know that tune. My dad was listening for years. And, but yeah, it was always, so my parents loved music, but they never really tried to play. And all my friends were getting into music in middle school. And so I was 13 and I was like, yeah, I want to try it. And so I, started, Guns N' Roses got me into it. I'll admit it. I think Slash is a great player, and and so yeah, he got me going on it, and I just I just thought I thought sweeping was like my own secret little kind of weapon I had. I really worked on it, and I love getting new exercises to work on, and that just made me want to get better and better. I love to see results from practice. I love seeing like improvement. I mean, I like that in video games. I like that in just every aspect of life where you get to see your work, the fruition of actual work. And so yeah, I just went with that. That sweeping just really opened the door and made me want to learn and just change everything to a sweeping exercise or economy picking exercise. Like I would take Intense Rock by Paul Gilbert, his first REH video is very influential for a lot of alternate pickers, a lot of shredders, and I would try and just do the sweeping thing with it, and so that was always fun just to see how my secret trick would work on stuff that's giving a lot of other people problems. I was like, oh yeah, I got this little. Yeah, it works like a charm, man. It's just you just move it. You got to tweak the notes a little bit, tweak the arrangement, so to speak, of the notes, and you can really burn it. And you just almost anything. And so that's about it. I mean, I just got married at 30 and had my children, and I've always like I've never really had to. I've kind of just been lucky that I was left a little bit of funds to explore this, and I've really tried not to waste it. But yeah, I always check music kind of as a hobby, but I really want to take it, to the next level at this point, So yeah.
Well, now what is it about music? Can you talk a little bit about music? Because I mean, I think something seems to happen to people at some point, and a light goes off, and it just opens something up, and then if you follow the path, it just leads you there. And it seems to be, although the specifics are different, a lot of the sort of general details tend to be very similar with people that I have asked the same question about when did the light go on, and what was it about music? What is it about music in particular that is so drawing? I know you said something about, it's like, perfecting something. Like, even with like with video games or other things apparently that you do, if you can just elaborate a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's like I know it sounds like kind of immature, but I mean it's in what other way can you really like drop a person's jaw? Like maybe if you're like 7'8" or something, but if you can do something really spectacular, you can, I mean, at least for me, I would be like, oh, like when I see an amazing drummer and a Virgil Donati or Dennis Chambers, I mean, I'm almost like, and so I just love that the music can do that to people. I love the jaw dropping. I even see that in some math identities now. I see like some from Ramanujan. I'm like, oh my God, how did he do that? And I boiled it down to like, you have to have like two things happening at once, simultaneity of two, but it has to be both excellent ideas. So if we can get just like Swibert's a perfect example of that, just where you have two independent things going on and you combine them. And that's kind of my rough, how to drop jaws is just to like, you got to have two different things going on. You can't just have this, excel at one. You got to have like, that's kind of my rough, that's what music did to me. And it's just like, when I see like Mark O'Connor and I just see it, and now I just like try and look for it everywhere. I don't just limit myself to rock and guitar. I try and listen to all sorts of clarinet sonatas, and what Bulgarian piano music and just everywhere. I love chorus. I love the Rachmaninoff's choral music and just so I listen to everything. I love it. And I just try and find and I try and apply whatever my thing is. I try and take take like a Beach Boys solo and just turn it into a Chopin etude. Let's take the something from Let's Go Away for a While off Pet Sounds and turn it into the Etude 1 by Chopin. I did an Instagram post. Just I mean, I'm not doing the full Etude, but I'm just doing the first few bars, see what it'd be like. Kind of just slam different musical worlds together and see what happens. I like that aspect too.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
So in this Cracking the Code series that Troy Grady has,
yes.
So how did you meet?
Well, he was coming to Houston to film Rusty Cooley already, and he found out that I was going to be there too, that I lived nearby, and so he just called me. I was, hey, you want to come by and I'll film you? And I saw other videos he did, and so it's great. Yeah, let's do it. And and I really like the work that Troy does. He's so amazing. His take on how to teach and his pedagogy is just those perfectly edited the videos. That whole new take is just brilliant. He's really just a different kind of musical genius. Just but more from his technique's amazing, but it's also from a pedagogy. He's brought a whole other aspect to it. So yeah, Troy's amazing.
What's amazing to me about Troy, I mean, all of that stuff that you just said, but so he's studying all the stuff he's videoing. It's not just to document it, right?
That's right.
And so then he's shedding the stuff out. So he's like changing his technique. And then he's like playing all the stuff that these guys are playing, and I'm like, dude, most players, their technique is a combination of the kinds of stuff that they want to play, and then certain limitations that they physically may have, and so you have to sort of find the sort of groove. You have to find the perfect way to play that does, that doesn't injure you, but that also allows you to be able to play the stuff you want to be able to play. And so his ability to diagnose what it is that's actually happening, and then to be able to actually incorporate it into his own playing is pretty astounding. That's that's quite amazing. One thing I talk to my students about often, my saxophone students, and well, it's this idea of speed. Okay? So part of this way I started thinking about speed was because of checking Troy's videos out. But one of the things is that usually so we have this thing where we tell people, if you want to be able to play something fast, then you got to play it slow.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to play it fast, then play it slow. If you can play it slow, then you can play it fast. Okay. That's the thing that people say, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They say it. Yeah.
Right. But the problem is, and of course his videos prove this, is that the mechanics is totally different at different speeds.
Yeah.
Okay. And especially when you get to really fast, the mechanics totally changes. So when you're really slow, what tends to be the case is that people tend to exaggerate whatever the motion is because it's slow, so you can get away with it. As you get faster and faster, your motions have to become tighter and tighter to be able to, to play faster, right?
Yes.
And the same thing is on saxophone, keyboard, any instrument, right, where physics is involved, right?
Yes.
And so what I tell my students, I mean, the only way to learn how to play fast is by practicing fast.
Yeah.
Now here's the issue though. If you can't play something slowly perfectly, then you won't be able to play it fast perfectly. Right. So that does make sense. And I think that's where some of that conventional sort of teaching comes from.
Yeah.
but it's also possible to be able to play something sort of at macro. Let's see, what am I trying to say? Big distances between the tempos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I found that sometimes students, they can learn something maybe at a slow tempo, at a medium tempo, and then at a fast tempo. But then when I ask them to play it in any of the in-between tempos, that will mess them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason is because the physics is totally different at different tempos. So and so you have to really, if you're going to really master something, you really do have to speed it up a little bit at a time so that you can cover all the tempos. It's not just so that you can develop the facility to be able to play it at the faster tempo from playing it at slower tempos. No, it's because you want to have the flexibility with it. Play it at all of the tempos in between.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think each tempo is almost its own animal, and each one has to be tamed, and you got to fight it and work at it. And the true Franz Liszt would, he would say a virtuoso is somebody who not only can play the most demanding works, but can also play it and make it look like it was nothing. And that's because there's something to be said for I'm playing it, and then after like give me a towel. Whew, that's okay. Yeah, you played it, but I mean, come on, you want to do it with some grace and some style. So, yeah, I always thought it's like just try and go for extra, and then so when you come off it a little bit, you don't have to be at top speed. That's what the great thing about economy picking and legato is you can get some serious speed going. You don't have to get all bent out of shape and all just straining and stress and my elbow, my my I'm this that, so that's what I like about it's just the speed is it doesn't really count unless you're doing it with some style and some some nice grace. That's my thinking.
Yeah, so sometimes you'll see. This is a pretty common thing that, less mature students tend to do is they'll look at whoever their hero is, right? They'll be like, oh, this guy right here, I want to be able to play the stuff that this guy plays. Now, what they don't realize is that you can look at almost anybody playing and you can find something that they probably aren't doing exactly right. Okay, some aspect of their technique, some quirk, maybe their shoulders are way up when they're playing or something, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so what they'll do is they go right to the thing that is the wrong thing to be emulating. And then that's what they deal with. Of course, they can't play any of the stuff that the guy plays, right? But but they go right to that. So case in point, and this is not really to tease Kenny G too much. He's been teased enough.
Yeah, Pat Metheny is kind of rough.
But the reason that Kenny G plays with the horn kind of cockeyed in his chops,
right?
Because his hero David Sanborn does that.
Oh, he would do that.
Now here's the problem though. Now, of course, David can really play.
Yes.
The reason that David plays that way is because he had polio when he was a kid.
Oh my God. I did not know that.
Right. So Kenny G is emulating the wrong thing. The musicianship is what you should emulate, not some, weird stuff that has nothing to do with it. Here's another, there's some saxophone players, for instance, that they'll be doing weird stuff with one of their arms when they're playing.
Right.
Almost as like a stylistic thing or something. I don't know what it is, but they just get into it and they start doing this, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that when they really are about to play something super technical, all of that extra movement goes away.
Oh, interesting.
Because you can't play anything technical if you're doing a bunch of extra stuff, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You got to be,
economy
on task. That's right. Exactly. So then they'll be over there trying to emulate, the flapping around and stuff, And it's like, but you can't play the stuff this cat's playing. And also notice that when they actually go to play technical stuff, all of that stuff goes away.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's a good way. What about Dizzy Gillespie with it? I thought, you know, when I was learning tuba, he was like, "Oh, keep your cheeks, don't," you know. And then I see Dizzy Gillespie going like this, and I'm like, he made it work. I guess to each his own. You know what? How do you explain that?
He made it work, but there was something wrong with the muscles in his face. He had a disease in his face that actually caused the muscles to separate from. Yeah, so he had to play that way.
Okay. All right.
But again, it's one of those instances where people they grab onto something that looks flashy or it looks different or it's the new, you know, it's the flavor of the month or whatever. So they're into that, but they don't address any of the substance, the real stuff that we should be actually paying attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it can come from anywhere. I remember just stumbling across a YouTube video. Some guy's playing like Renaissance lute music, and this guy was like, just this old British guy was saying, "Don't let your fingers come too high off the fingerboard." I'm like, God, you know, I never thought about that. That's right. Why do my fingers need to come out? You know, so just you know, be barely just the most minimal motion, and you can just find a great lesson right there. Just a 2-minute little tiny video on YouTube, like changed my playing greatly, and it's amazing. And just little quirky things like that can help so much.
So I started playing bass. Let's see here, 2005 or something like that.
Well, what was your first instrument? What's your first? Okay. And when did you start that?
Oh, I started that when I was 6. So
wow.
I just turned 46. So I've been playing for 40 years.
Yeah. Wow.
That seems it seems like a weird number to say.
Yeah.
I told my son that, and he made some comment about me being old or something. And you know, the kids are they just will say anything. They just blurt it out. So
yes,
if you were sensitive about any topic, that's the one thing that they just keep saying over and over and over and over.
That's about right. Yeah. I mean, how long did Charlie Parker even live? I mean, and it's like, he died young. Very young. Yeah. And so, I mean, like, you've been playing longer than like some of these greats have been alive. And Coltrane only lived to be 40 or so. I mean, it's just, man, some of these guys, they just had barely any time to get there. And they just left such huge, I mean, Countdown. I'm going to be like wrestling with Countdown like my whole life. I just don't see any that at moment's notice. I just love the challenge that, you know, they left for us. It's just so incredible, you know.
Clifford Brown died in his 20s.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. One thing I think it's easy to forget and not to put in the proper perspective is that, you know, jazz was really a young man's game. You know, like a lot of the people, you know, the artists that, you know, got big names and you know, they were when they were very young.
Yeah,
you know, that stuff started when they were very young, and
especially bebop, right? I mean, when you say bebop, like, it's really totally young man's. I mean, those are the really young cats just coming out.
Well, yeah, I mean, all the guys that developed it, I mean, they were young when they developed that language.
Yeah.
You know, Parker was young. I mean, Parker died when he's mid-30s. You know.
Yeah.
So
hard living.
Really, really hard living.
Yes.
Really hard living. One thing though with Parker that I always resist and I never dig is did you see that movie Bird?
The Clint Eastwood? Yeah, I did.
So, you know, it was nice and dramatic for, you know, for Hollywood and for the movies and everything, right? But notice that they spent no time talking about how much this guy must have been practicing.
Yeah.
To play any of that stuff that he was playing. And to be the inventor of that language.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
how much dedication it must have been. Now, obviously, he had some pretty terrible demons.
Yeah, but it gets even worse. What's that movie that came out with the bald guy? You know, it's a jazz program a movie about and they're playing like a big band, like in a jazz competition.
Oh yeah, Whiplash.
Whiplash, yeah, and that doesn't even show the joy of music. Nobody even smiles while they play. It's like, you know, it's like, wait, come on, music's fun, or we wouldn't be doing it, man. I mean, it's jeez, like, oh, okay, it's such a grind. Come on.
Okay, so let me tell you my Whiplash story.
Okay.
So, when that movie came out, students of mine kept asking me, "Hey, have you seen the movie? You know, what do you think about the movie?" And I was like, "I do not want to see this movie," because I saw what it was about, and I was like, "This is just totally ridiculous. Why do I want to watch this?"
Right.
The guy is counting this chart off like 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, that's dance count.
Yeah,
that's dance counting. That's not, you know, it's. I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff that right off the bat I was like, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. And then on top of that, my dad called me, and he said, "Have you watched this movie, The Whiplash?" And I said, "No, I haven't watched it." He said, "I tried to watch it. And within the first few minutes of the movie, I had to turn it off."
Yeah.
Because he thought it was totally ridiculous that somehow berating students and throwing chairs at them and stuff like that was supposed to be the critical ingredient in turning somebody into a great musician.
Yeah.
You know, so he
the Bobby Knight of jazz.
Right. It's like,
Bobby Knight.
Really? You're whipping chairs at the drummer? I mean, come on, man. Now, I did see the movie. And the reason that I saw it, like I said, is because I wanted to be able to talk intelligently about the movie.
Yeah,
with students.
It's gonna come up.
You know, there were some moments in the movie that I thought were, you know, there was some good moments in it. One of the moments was the sort of the guy. I guess he goes over to his girlfriend's house for dinner, and they're like grilling him on his choice, you know, on him being a musician.
Yeah.
It's kind of like all of these, like, you know, questions and stuff, and kind of disrespecting him, sort of, you know, by asking those questions. Yeah.
And you know, that beat's got to be useful in jazz. Just going as fast as you can. You know, remember the one who was trying to the ultimate challenge? Yeah, that's such a great beat there he's got.
Right, and he's like bloody hands and stuff in the practice room.
Yeah,
so, dude, that might not be the right thing. I try not to bleed when I practice. That's kind of that's part of it's sort of
it sort of detracts from the a little bit.
So, but all right, so
wait, well, just so compare before we leave the like music in cinema. Let's just say that the Bird show was, I think Clint Eastwood showed a little bit more. You could tell that he loved jazz. I think that came through.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, much more so than like something like Whiplash, which was like just spectacle more than anything. You know?
I think that is definitely true, but I also think that he was also trying to sell tickets.
Yeah,
and so there was a lot more attention to the sort of tragic components, the tragic aspects of his life. I interviewed Paquito D'Rivera, and Paquito, he played with Dizzy Gillespie and like with everybody. In 1980 he defected from Cuba, and he played with like everybody, and he's one of the central early figures around that whole Cuban jazz whole thing.
Yeah.
And Afro-Cuban.
Afro-Cuban,
yeah. So anyhow, I was talking to him, and I asked him about, maybe a few conversations he had with Dizzy. And in particular, I asked him about, did Dizzy talk to him about Charlie Parker? he talked a little bit. He talked to him a little bit about that, and mainly about this the kind of dedication and mastery that Charlie Parker had. Because he sort of asked him a question. He knew the answer, but he wanted to see what Dizzy would say. He says, well, you know, did Charlie read? Did he read music? You know, he asked him like a question like that. And and Dizzy was like, oh, of course he could read. I mean, there's no way you can play anywhere like that if you didn't really study the music and really know what was going on. But yeah, it was he was a tragic figure, but maybe the most influential musician of all time. I mean, in the modern era, I mean, in any musician as far as popular music and any commercial music and anything else. I mean, I think music took such a turn at that point that I can't think of someone that was more influential than that. Some people would say, well, yeah, it was Louis Armstrong. I'll say, yeah, Louis was really important, but
Miles Davis. To me,
yeah, but Miles, yes, I think Miles was influential, but Miles didn't really. Charlie Parker changed the game. I mean, he changed the way we use chromaticism, the fact that we use all of the notes in the chord scale with almost even regularity, right? The whole emphasis from being on the beat to being on the and, the way that he used triplets.
A lot more triplets.
All of the polyrhythm, I mean, he totally changed that. One thing that Paquito did say, which was interesting, I totally did not know this at all, was that Charlie, and this was around the time when Charlie Parker did the Charlie Parker with Strings, which that whole thing was kind of started around 1946, and then so he actually, partly due to that experience, he wanted to quit playing saxophone, move to Paris, and study composition at the Paris Conservatory.
Interesting. God, that would have been something. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, you heard the story. Gershwin asked Ravel for arranging lessons, and Ravel said, "Wait, how much do you make for the Rhapsody in Blue and all that? You don't need lessons." You don't need lessons, brother. You're doing fine.
That's right. That's right. So, can you talk about maybe some big musical moments, some highlights that you've had? I mean, just like my sister lives in Fort Worth. Well, yeah, she used to live in Fort Worth, and Van Cliburn called me on the phone, and that's as far as music goes, that's like that's the most famous musician I've ever talked to. Probably just Van Cliburn. I haven't talked to him about. I said, how should I teach my son about music? He goes, start with the grand staff. Teach him the notes of the grand staff of the piano. You know, where you have the treble clef and the bass clef like locked together, you know, as one kind of unit. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's but other than that, I just like challenging the masters and just, I mean, cause you know, I haven't really, you know, toured much or gigged all that much. I mean, I did the rock tour thing with the band Black Sheep in the late '90s, and we went on some, you know, radio stations, and that's about it. And you know, and I just came away with playing in that kind of setting. It's just like you're just playing in front of drunk people, and it's kind of not very as an artist, it's not very giving as far as feedback and. An accomplishment. So I just, you know, I take it more privately and just like trying to play Paganini's Perpetual Motion up to tempo is really, maybe playing it at 190 is like, that's
I consider that a feather in my cap, being able to do that. And not just just playing sheer speed, but playing it and like hitting, knowing you hit every note, and that's what completing my album was about. Just like we played every piece that I've been working on, and we just like really, we got to make sure we got every note perfect. And I knew I played it well from the heart, and it was musical.
You're talking about Transcendental Executioner?
Yeah, the Transcendental Executioner. Yeah, and playing, getting Paganini's Fifth Caprice, like on a guitar, because that's been haunting. There's always Jason Becker did it, and but he didn't play the grand arpeggios at the beginning. So I just wanted to get that done and just like up to tempo, the whole thing. Just that I'd really consider that one of my crowning any achievements. That I really like that one, because you can really use the sweeping and everything. It really comes across, So yeah, those are some of my accomplishments, I guess.
now you have I heard another project also. It's earlier project. What's the name of
the other album was Presto Digitation.
Oh yeah, that's right. Presto Digitation. Yeah.
And that's more of some old cuts. Yeah.
Now, okay. So speaking of fast fingers, what do you think of these sort of world record speed guitar players? The Flight of the Bumblebee guys.
Flight of the Bumblebee, yes. Rimsky-Korsakov would enjoy every note of that, I'm sure. I don't get it. I don't think it sounds good to me personally, and I've had a hard time believing it sounds good to anyone else. And isn't that the whole point of music? Not how fast someone can pick just by a weird quirk of your musculature and your nervous system. Sean Lane had that quirk, and he was hired by the biggest rock band at the time, Black Oak, Arkansas, because he sounded good when he did it. When he went like a buzzsaw, as alternate picking. So I don't get that. I don't know what that has to do with music. It's a weird curiosity. If you want to do that, the other guy's fine, but I don't get it.
Hey man, you should in your live streams, you need a clock that's like right beside you with a really obvious second hand. You know what I'm saying, right? Because that's a lot of times that's how they show that they didn't speed the video up.
Oh, that's right.
Playing fast, right?
Oh my God, that's right. That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, so you need a clock in your videos.
Otherwise, it's just he did a computer generated speed, man.
That's right. That's right. You could have slowed. You could have sped it up.
Oh my God, that's so lame. Oh my God, jeez,
it's hilarious.
Yes.
All right. Maybe I'll send you a clock.
Please do.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about. Okay, can you? So you've talked a bit about things that you're working on, but what is your practice routine like? In how do you go about, getting something from the beginning, to complete it and perfect it?
I usually a piece that's it's like that guy. I'm sorry, I'm whiffing on the name, but the new drummer for Dream Theater. That's one of the most coveted gigs in rock, and the guy who got it I can't think of his name right now, but he beat out some amazing players, Virgil Donati for one.
Right. I saw that whole
yeah, and he did it. What did he say? He said, I practiced it 10 trillion times. I just played it over. So you can't beat that as far as practice. It's real simple. It's it's maybe not a sexy kind of answer or anything, but I mean, it is what it is. It's like, you just play it over and over again, and you like musically, but that's what as teacher when I was at Vanderbilt at the Blair School of Music, I did some master class. I think it was Claude, some great legend who's no longer with us, and he was like, slow musical practice is the key, because when you want to play slow, you kind of start to get away and start to get more mechanical, and it's you be just as expressive and just as musical as at a slow tempo and slow practice. It was like, always be musical. That's one of my always be musical, even no matter what you're doing in the studio and working on music. That's what we're here for, is to be musical and not to ever be, it's too easy to fall down that trap of just being, mechanicus, just robot. It's just really got to fight that temptation, but, it's the metronome plays a huge part of working on a piece. And you got to have it either, but it's the great thing about YouTube is, if you want to work on like improv, getting to like maybe being able to solo over something, you have any number of keys you can play over, different tempi and whatnot on YouTube. So that I use that extensively. There's all sorts of apps that are wonderful. But yeah, my key, I always have a keyboard in wherever I am, and it has usually a built-in metronome, the latest digital pianos. I just have a simple Casio, I don't know what, but it's a digital piano, and that I use the drum, because you can lose a little drum machine or a little metronome. You can always say, oh, where's my metronome? Now, when you have your digital piano right here, that metronome's going nowhere, and it's plenty loud, and you can hear it, and that's how definitely metronome-based practice is the way to go, and what you got to learn to practice with the metronome. Like really, when I learned this at U of H at the piano department there, and work. You're really not just playing along, the tempo as is, just playing 16th notes, but accenting the second of every grouping, accenting. We're going to go through. Now we're going to accent the third, and now we're going to accent the fourth note of every group. Just really working different angles with scales and arpeggios, and of course it's a lot of scales. I mean, they asked me like, what's, the key to technique? And it's like, I mean, you're just going to have to come to terms with scales and the classical approach to scales. Cause I mean, let's face it, the guy's been doing this for a long time. And I like to acknowledge, the players from from history. They were just as smart as us in a lot of ways, if not just, smarter. And they knew, they had made a lot of discoveries back then because they didn't have a lot of other distractions like we have. And so I kind of take some of a lot of their input and use their take on it. And because there's a lot of these old like piano like technique like from the 1880s because the piano was going nuts and so everyone's writing a technique book about piano and so you can look back at some of those and they'll have some incredible ways to practice that I never even thought of, like I can't go into it, but I mean it's just like I never would have thought of that if I hadn't gone back and looked at that old piano technique book from 1880, and it applies just today in 2020 as it did in 1880, just as well it applies. So yeah,
coming up, so my dad was a great saxophone player, and so that was a great teacher to have in the house. And we played both sides of the horn. We played jazz stuff and learned stuff by ear, and but then also classical stuff. And we also played the universal material, the universal fundamentals, rudiments, scales, arpeggios, scales and thirds, all those things. And and my experience with music has always been on both sides. My doctorate, matter of fact, is saxophone performance. It's a classical degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important to My view of things, my view of music is that if you can master both sides of the instrument, if you can really play classical, and if you could really play jazz, there's nothing that exists that you can't play.
Yeah.
You know. Now, obviously, you still have to address specific stylized, issues. I mean, you have to do that. There's nothing worse than hearing like a bebop saxophone player, playing on like a pop tune. They have none of the like nuance or any of the I mean, they're just playing like changes. They're playing changes, but like it's on like Britney Spears songs.
Oh my God. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than hearing that. Now, it's not because the bebop guy doesn't have the capability of doing that. It's that they just don't listen to that music at all.
They could.
Obviously,
they work on it. Yeah.
Right. So you do have to spend that time like soaking in it. I'm a church musician also, and I played in church for years and years. I'm the minister of music at a church, and that helps in sort of absorbing and assimilating the different styles of music, and playing in rock bands, playing all kinds of different kinds of settings. I mean, if you're bored in music, I don't know what you're doing. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that's on you. Yeah, there's so many things to explore. I mean, I'm like, God, I'm 44, and I'm just like, there's so many things I want to do still, and I'm just nowhere near. It's like, there's that thing that I haven't even started on, whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, and then you can take on other instruments, and that's another thing that I think, people ask me, like, does your piano affect your guitar playing? And I mean, I just look, it's like, well, let's look at Sean Lane, played the piano and guitar. Frank Gambale, great keyboard player and guitar. I think there is something there to help, just learning a different, way to look at the notes and technique is very valuable. And I think it also just helps your technique in general, and they complement each other. So I would recommend everyone just try what other, just even if it's, one of these, one of these guys, just anything, just try to be musical with anything, but just from two different points of view, at least. Now you can go like you do and learn how to play, I don't know, countless instruments. I don't know what your latest count is. That was amazing, your video where you played the one riff, and that was not an easy riff. That was a really cool lick. Just, I don't know how many different ways you'd end up doing it. That was amazing. That's taking a little, I don't know. That's extreme talent, I guess. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. I'll pay you. This is me paying you under the table.
Okay. I'm truly, seriously, it was incredible.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, you're talking about playing different instruments and how they help each other.
Yeah.
That's definitely been my experience. So, for instance, and I started saying this before, and we took a tangent, and well, now we're going back to that, back there, and so I started playing bass when I was, let's see, in like 2005 or something like that. And the reason I started playing, so I had been playing with Victor Wooten, and I've known Victor for a lot of years. I interviewed him.
Amazing.
I'm on two. Yeah. He's super bad, and as great a musician he's just as good of a person, which is like more impressive to me. But I'm on a couple of his projects. I'm on Palmistry, and I'm also on Soul Circus.
Okay, I gotta check that out. Definitely.
So he came to Ohio State, and of course I had been playing with him. I knew, of course we'd been friends for a long time and everything, but he came to Ohio State and he did a master class, and of course I came in, checked the master class out, and I left the master class and went straight to a music store and bought a bass.
Wow, that's great.
Okay.
That's great.
I went straight to and bought a bass, and it turns out that the bass that I bought, it was a Samick, a five-string Samick, and I never could get that particular bass to do what I wanted.
Right.
And then so I traded it in for this 6-string Galveston. It was like a P bass with 2 silk bar pickups, and I took it to a great guitar luthier and a great player in town. Only person that I take any of my guitars to, named Craig Phillips, and he totally made that thing play great. And I spent hours and hours practice. I was practicing 4 or 5 hours a day. And a buddy of mine sat me down. Now, fortunately, I was blessed to have so many great bass players that I've played with that I know. And so I would just like ask guys questions. In particular, a guy named Scott Gold, who's a terrific player. He actually studied with Jaco.
Wow.
He's a total beast of a player.
Yes.
And so my technique is a combination of him and then another great friend of mine, Tim Comiskey, who I also interviewed. But especially with the left hand. Now, one thing I noticed, especially from the sort of stretching associated with playing out on the end of the neck on a bass, was I was working muscles in gaining flexibility that actually directly benefited the left hand technique on my saxophone, especially while playing palm keys. And it just a lot easier to play. It just became a lot easier to play on saxophone because of the stretching on the bass. Now, you totally would not think that those things would have any relationship or would help each other at all.
Right. Definitely,
but it certainly did.
Wow.
And it reminds me, another person I got some good counsel from early on. He was used to be the double bass professor at Ohio State, named Paul Robinson.
Oh, right.
Paul Robinson, who's a super talented guy. Of course, he also played electric bass. So he heard me practicing in my office. Our offices were on the same floor.
Yeah.
He heard me practicing in my office, and he comes in and he says, "Is that a 7-string bass?" I said, "Yeah," because I had grown into a 7-string bass.
7-string bass.
That's another story.
Wow.
Yeah, that's another story.
Okay.
So I had grown into a 7, and he says, "You should tune that like a guitar." He says, "You'd be able to play all kinds of stuff that bass players can't usually play, and you'd be able to take advantage of all of the guitar music."
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I started tuning it. Now, of course, it has one extra string on the bottom, a low B, just like basically a 7-string rock guitar tuning, but just an octave lower.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, depending on the way that you think about it, you either have a 5-string bass on the bottom, standard tuning, or you have a 6-string guitar on the top with a B on the bottom.
Yes, a low B. Yeah.
Right. So anyhow, one of the things that he told me was, because he was watching my left hand technique, he says, you should put a piece of paper under the strings, and you should, when you're playing, you should not allow the piece of paper to move. And so what that basically facilitated, it forced me to have to do is to keep my fingers so close to the strings.
Yeah.
And when I was not using fingers, I was always had them closer to the strings. So I didn't end up with a lot of this.
Right.
Very, very close. It just reminded me of something that you said that you learned from watching that lute video.
The lute player, yeah. Now, what kind of technique do you use? Do you use plectrum on bass or fingers? Or?
3 fingers.
3 fingers. Yeah, because like Petitucci would use just 2, as I recall, and same with Jaco.
Jaco used 2. Jaco used 2. Yep. A lot of modern guys switched to using 3. Scott Gold used 3, and so I started playing with 3.
Right.
Great bass player that used to work at Ohio State as the bass instructor there, Andy Woodson. Actually, it's interesting. He's older than I am, but we have birthday on the same day. And so every time, I always send him a message on my birthday, say happy birthday. Back at you, you know.
Yeah.
But he's a great bass player. He's also a great upright player. But he plays with 3 fingers also, and there's a bunch of guys that play with 3.
Well, Billy Sheehan on the old David Lee Roth albums, he would use 4 on that for the tremolo kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have tried to incorporate my pinky.
Yeah,
I still don't. I can do it. Yeah, I don't use my pinky.
Work in progress. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was saying, because of the bass fingering, because of the bass tuning.
Yes.
When I started playing guitar, the fretboard was not the issue because I already knew the tuning because I had been playing, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
And so then, like I said, really the issue was the pick. And it was a terrible issue.
Yeah.
for a long time. Still is. Now, what kind of picks do you play? I mean, I know the answer, but I want you to say.
I started off with these. Let me get one right here. Well, just the if I can get it up to the camera. Yeah, this is called a big Dunlop Jazz Stubby, and it's got a little indentation there. Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's the contoured edge really helps. Yep. So, I went with those. I used to use the smaller version before 2008, and I had one lying around. I just tried it, and the Paganini's Fifth Caprice just came out way easier because of these. So, I mean, it really helped at a particular piece of music. I don't know how, but it has helped. But I found that I can go with like just a regular. This is an old pick that Ibanez just gives you. It came with one of my old guitars I bought recently. And it's worked just fine. And it's almost actually like gives more of a staccato sound. So there's something to be said for all picks. They, once you learn, you can kind of make it work with lots of different kinds, and they have different sounds. So it's kind of fun to try different sounds. Definitely.
Now, how often do you have to change a pick? Because I've noticed that I eventually I have to change these.
Yeah, I usually have a problem where they come with a defective tip, and I just instantly just sling them. They're toast. But yeah, I really haven't had a problem with breaking them. I just I used, I think it's because I used a stylus pick early on. It's this weird thing that taught you just use the very tip, because if you use more than the tip, you're the whole thing will get caught behind the string. It's this brilliant like teaching tool pick.
Right.
I don't think it's available anymore. It might be. I don't know, but it taught you just to use. You don't need to dig in. I mean, if you're going to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan and really get into, really get into it. But I mean, for the most part, you just use the very tip, and you can, that'll make it work. That's sufficient to sound the string.
So my issue isn't with necessarily breaking the pick. It's more of the issue is that the very tip starts to wear out. Like it's kind of more of like it's a slippery kind of, surface. But then when it starts to wear out, it gets a little gritty towards the edge because like the strings have worn off the whatever the I don't want to say that this is, I don't know that it's coated per se, but it starts getting rough is what I want to say.
Okay.
But you don't. But yours isn't doing that.
No, I haven't had a problem with that. Just no.
Okay.
Actually,
that means so you just told me I'm picking too hard.
It's possible. Yeah. Maybe you got a bad batch. I don't know.
No, no, I'm definitely picking too hard. That's been an issue because I started on bass, and then I was playing on really heavy stuff on guitar, and then I was having some issues with my left hand falling asleep.
Oh, yeah.
And I was concerned, is it carpal tunnel, whatever it is? And I talked to my sister, who's a psychiatrist, and she told me that she thinks that I have a pinch in my shoulder. And of course, I went to another doctor, and they told me the same thing from all of the weight training and stuff. So, but for whatever reason, surrounding my elbow and my wrist or whatever was going on, I don't have that problem anymore.
Yeah, good.
Initially, what I thought the issue was that I was squeezing too hard.
Yeah,
the neck, and so I was like, okay, well, how can I stop doing that? I was like, well, let me start using lighter gauge strings. So what gauge strings are you using?
I use the lightest possible 8. And I was having the same kind of problem. I did wide stretches and using like 10s. I got into 10s for some, I don't know why. Just started to use 10s for some reason. Maybe because I felt they would break less, but I started to feel sort of a numbness occasionally with my left hand and with fretting hand. And I was like, okay, that's not good. So I just started. I felt, hey, those 8s work. They just feel lighter and they feel like butter. I just play. I just feel freer with them. So to speak. So I switched that, and I haven't had the problem since. So I think it's heavier strings can really tax your musculature. I definitely think so. Definitely.
Yeah. So now I'm down to 9s on most everything except for my. I've got a Strandberg.
Wow.
It's a Bowden 8. It's got a multi-scale, and on that one I have 8s on that.
Yeah. The fan frets, is that fan? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can't handle the fan frets. But if you can tame them, more power to you. That's I can't abide those. My goodness.
Well, honestly, I just started. I started playing. I started considering that because I was trying to figure out what the issue with my left hand falling asleep. I was like, well, maybe I'm doing some weird stuff, and the logic of it seems to make sense because, rather than this kind of motion like this going straight up and down the neck, I could limit some of that, and I thought that was going to end up being easier on my hand. It turns out that it has that it's not related.
Yeah.
It's not related at all. So. But at least that's my excuse for looking at it, looking into it.
Yeah.
Now I love that guitar, so I'm stuck.
I've heard very good things about Strandberg. Very good things.
Yeah, great guitars. All right, man. Well, talk to us about the future. And I know it's kind of nebulous right now, and tomorrow's the election.
Yeah. Craziness.
Maybe. Oh, goodness. All kind of craziness.
Yes. Whatever happens, I want it to be like just over. Just whoever's going to win it, just win it. Let's be done with it, and let's get out of this Corona thing and. Yeah, I don't know, get a vaccine going or something, because we got to get back to the regular world. I've had just about enough of my masks and kids. My son's wearing a mask. Daddy, I can't breathe this freaking thing. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, son. It's just the new normal for now, I guess. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep on. I just want to really. The piano literature, and I'm just stealing from Marc-Andre Hamelin, the greatest player in the world right now, I think classically. And he said the piano literature is like 1,000 times bigger than most people realize. There's just, and in it, there's some extremely worthwhile pieces to explore, and just have unlimited, just different sound worlds. All these great composers, they each have to create their own just world of sound. Like Debussy and it's different from Franz Liszt, is different from Chopin, and so I just want to just want to explore all that, and if anything I can get to work on guitar with either with Swibert or sweeping, I'm ready to just apply all I know just to, and then start, of course, composing more of my own tunes and stuff, and just get a few things going on the back burners, and that's what I'm going to try and do going forwards, and just keep improving, and hopefully one day I'll tackle rhythm changes and tame that beast, and tame Countdown and Moment's Notice, but I think I almost got a handle on Giant Steps. I got a few tricks up my sleeve for that, but yeah.
Hey, you asked about that. There was a video I did, and I played that exercise that I teach my students over rhythm changes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we can trade books.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's trade, and then you'll have that.
Yeah, I need it.
Other stuff. Right. So anyhow, I appreciate your time, man, and it's great to talk to you like this, and I pray for your family, and I pray that we can get out of this thing quickly. I pray for peaceful, whatever happens with the election, for it to be peaceful and not some freaking idiots out there doing wild and crazy stuff for no good reason.
I hear you.
Just tempers to just cool, and just a lot less stress and anxiety, and all of
definitely.
That. I would be very happy with that.
Sounds beautiful.
Right.
Sounds great, man.
All right. Well, God bless you, man.
We'll see you. Thanks, man.
All right, I'll see you. Have a good one.
Adios.